Welcome to rebuilding a vintage open steam launch, and this is part 1, initial inspection and removing the steam engine and boiler. This is a lovely old boat. It's possibly, I would think, around 50 years old, and the builder of this superb model is the same person who built the steamship that I worked on a short while ago. And in common with the steamship, the attention to detail is very good indeed. This winch, for instance, only seems to go in one direction. It doesn't need to go in one direction because it's just a dummy that sits on the deck. But its careful attention to detail on things like the winch and the rear seating, as you can see here, as well as the general build quality, which is absolutely wonderful, that sets this boat aside from others. And the builder also machined the castings and built the engine. And this steam engine is a Stuart Models twin compound launch engine. This means that the steam is used twice. First of all, it goes into a small high-pressure cylinder, which then in turn exhausts into a larger cylinder, which is the low-pressure cylinder. This means that the engine is more efficient and will use less steam. So the combination of a compound engine coupled to a large steam boiler should make for a very free-steaming model boat. And here's where the fun begins. It's time now to take it apart. And as you can see, most of the planking on the deck is quite loose. This will need sticking back to the plywood former. The clip currently showing illustrates how much of this deck planking is actually loose around the edge. Most of it, in fact, but with the help of modern adhesives and a bit of patience, together with spring clamps in abundance, and I do have a lot of those, I should be able to persuade the planking to firmly stick back to the deck former. I think the construction of this boat is very well thought out and, of course, as I said earlier, very well made. Just look at this component. All these pieces sit in the holes in the main deck former, and there are 3 of them. There's a stern part, a midships part, as well as the part that I've just shown in the bow area of the boat. And once again, by looking at the edge, most of this planking is loose. I really do have to see to this, because if any water gets underneath there, then it's going to warp very badly. I'll probably use cyanoacrylate adhesive, which should give me a permanent bond to the wood underneath. Removing the middle section is quite difficult because there's a valve that's really in the way. A slot has been cut to accommodate this, but it's still quite tricky to remove it with the valve in the way. After removing all of the superstructure components from the boat, you can clearly see the engine and what's inside the boat. And also, of course, this boat was carved from one big lump of wood. It's not plank on frame, it's not glass fibre, and it's not metal. It was carved from a lump of wood. I can really never get my head around that. You start off with a tree, and with the help of a small chisel, suddenly a model boat appears. There are some chisel marks, and these chisel marks are quite small, so it was not a big chisel that was used. So it must really have taken a long time to make this boat. I'm still removing pieces from the boat. These are in the engine compartment, bits of aluminium checker plate. I'd like to take this opportunity to apologise for my voice. I have unfortunately caught a cold, and it's a real humdinger of a cold. So if I suddenly stop speaking and there is a loud pop, that means my head has exploded. But for the moment I'll continue. The engine came out of the boat sort of okay. 3 out of the 4 screws that held the engine into the boat came away okay. But this 4th screw was a real pain. It was securely wedged in the engine's base casting. So with this 4th screw in place, I very carefully levered the engine out of the boat. And thankfully there was no damage to either the engine or the boat. I'm giving the boat a clean because it is so incredibly dusty you couldn't see this component for dust. This is the water pump. It's the crankshaft-driven water pump that actually pulled water from the lake and into the boiler, or by opening what is called a bypass valve, you could let the water out into the lake again. This boiler is fixed to the mounting in the boat by using just 8 bolts. Not 4, not 3, 8. And I took these bolts out by using a spanner, and they were long bolts, and I had to remove all of these bolts, 1 turn at a time, multiplied by 8. But eventually the boiler was loosened from the boat and removed, and all that was left to show that the boiler had ever been in the boat was this, a methylated spirit burner connected to a tank that was very, very small. As I cleaned off the top of the methylated spirit burner, it became apparent that this was a commercial item and the tank was homemade. As I looked at the main body of this burner, it definitely reminded me of something from an early time, something in my dim and distant past. I think maybe they were used in camping stoves before they developed the gas-powered type. Maybe a viewer out there knows exactly what this is, and I would be grateful if you would enlighten me, because it's certainly a memory from my past somewhere along the line. Now that the hull of the boat is just that, a hull, it allows me to see the potential for fitting radio control and generally renovating the boat. But as soon as I turn the video camera off, the first thing I'm going to do is give the inside of this hull a thorough clean because it is filthy, and this dust is not doing my coal any good. That's it for now, thanks for watching, and I hope you found it useful.